They say the best security systems catch more than just burglars. Mine caught my wife plotting with her lawyer to frame me, steal my kids, and drain every account I had. What she didn't know, I was recording every single word. By the time I was done, her perfect plan became her perfect nightmare. My name is Otis Wells. I'm 42 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. Senior manager at Mountain Peak Telecommunications, 2 great kids, and what I believed was a solid marriage to my wife Brielle. We live in a nice suburban neighborhood in Colorado Springs, the kind of place where kids still ride bikes until dark and neighbors actually know each other's names. I should have known something was off when Brielle started those late-night phone calls. She'd step out onto our back patio, speaking in hushed tones, claiming she was just catching up with old college friends. When I'd ask about it later, she'd brush me off with that practiced smile of hers. "Just girl talk, honey," Brielle would say, waving her hand dismissively. "Nothing you'd find interesting." The fight started small, too. Stupid stuff, really. I'd leave my coffee mug in the sink instead of the dishwasher, and suddenly we're having a screaming match that lasts an hour. Or I'd forget to pick up milk on the way home, and she'd act like I'd committed some unforgivable sin. "You never listen to me, Otis," she'd snap, her green eyes flashing with an anger that seemed way out of proportion. I might as well be talking to a wall. Our son Daniel, who's 14, started spending more time in his room. Our 11-year-old daughter Amelia would look between us during these arguments with those big, worried eyes that no kid should have to have. I kept telling myself it was just stress, that all marriages go through rough patches. The real wake-up call came when I installed our new home security system. Top-of-the-line stuff from work, cameras, motion sensors, and crystal-clear audio recording. I was proud of that system, spent weeks getting it perfect. Little did I know it would end up saving my life in more ways than one. It was a Tuesday night in March when everything changed. I was working late at the office, testing some new network configurations, when I decided to check the home feed through my phone. The audio quality was so good you could hear a pin drop in any room of the house. That's when I heard Brielle's voice, clear as day, coming from the living room. "He doesn't suspect a thing," she was saying, and there was this tone in her voice I'd never heard before. Cold. Calculating. Otis is too wrapped up in his work gadgets to notice what's right in front of him. My blood turned to ice water in my veins. Who was she talking to? And more importantly, what exactly was I supposed to be suspecting? I sat there in my office chair, phone pressed to my ear, listening to my wife destroy our marriage with every word she spoke. The security system's audio was picking up everything crystal clear, and what I heard next made my hand shake. "Listen carefully," Brielle said in her phone, her voice taking on that business-like tone she used when she meant serious business. "Once I frame him in court, I'll take the kids and everything else. The house, his 401k, everything." My stomach dropped like I was on a roller coaster. "Frame me? Frame me for what?" There was a pause, then Brielle continued. "Miles already has the evidence we need. Those photos from the hotel will be perfect, and with my testimony about his supposed drinking problem, no judge will give him custody." Miles. That name hit me like a sledgehammer. Miles Clark, her co-worker at the marketing firm downtown. The same guy she'd been having all those innocent work lunches with for the past 6 months. The same guy who'd been at our house for dinner twice, sitting at my table, eating my food, and apparently planning to destroy my life. "The beauty of it is," Brielle went on, her voice filled with a sick satisfaction, "Otis is so trusting. He actually believes I'm working late all those nights. He has no idea what's coming." I had to bite my knuckle to keep from shouting. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain I'd ever experienced. This wasn't just about another man. This was a calculated plot to frame me for something I didn't do and steal my children from me. "What about the money?" Brielle asked whoever was on the other end. "Good. Make sure those offshore accounts are ready. I don't want him to have access to a single dollar when this goes down." Offshore accounts. My wife, the woman I trusted with my life, my heart, my children, had been systematically planning to rob me blind while setting me up for some kind of criminal charges. The call ended, and I heard Brielle's footsteps moving toward the kitchen. I sat there in the darkness of my office, my whole world spinning out of control. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, my future, it was all built on lies. My hands were trembling as I reached for my desk drawer and pulled out a small digital recorder. If Brielle wanted to play games with evidence, then I'd give her a taste of her own medicine. I rewound the security feed and started recording every damning word she'd just spoken. 20 minutes later, I had it all. Her admission of the frame job, the offshore accounts, the conspiracy with Miles, everything. The evidence was clear, and her voice was unmistakable. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. My marriage was over. Hell, it had been over for months, I just didn't know it. But I wasn't going down without a fight. If Brielle thought she could destroy me and steal my kids, she was about to learn that this old telecommunications manager had a few tricks of his own. The war for my life was about to begin. The next few days were hell. I went through the motions of normal life. Work, dinner with the family, helping Daniel with his math homework, while my world crumbled beneath my feet. Every time I looked at Brielle, I saw a stranger wearing my wife's face. But I wasn't just sitting there feeling sorry for myself. I was gathering intel like my life depended on it, because frankly, it did. I started small, checking our joint credit card statements online. What I found made my jaw clench, so hard I thought I might break a tooth. Hotel charges I didn't recognize, expensive dinners for two while I was supposedly working late, purchases from high-end boutiques that Brielle had never worn around me. The paper trail led me deeper into her web of lies. She'd been siphoning money from our joint accounts for months, moving small amounts to avoid detection. 300 here, 500 there. It added up to nearly $15,000 that had vanished into thin air. Then I found a real smoking gun. Buried in her email drafts folder was a message she'd never sent, but had apparently saved for reference. It was addressed to someone with the initials MC. Had to be Miles Clark. Baby, the draft read, Otis is getting suspicious about the money. We need to move faster on the timeline. Can you get those photos, doctor, by next week? And make sure your friend at the DA's office is ready with the domestic violence charges. Once we paint him as an abuser, custody will be a slam dunk. Domestic violence charges. My hand shook as I screenshot the draft. They weren't just planning to rob me. They were going to destroy my reputation, my relationship with my kids, maybe even send me to prison for crimes I never committed. I sat in my home office that night, staring at the evidence I collected, and felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't the woman I'd married, the woman who used to bring me coffee in bed on Sunday mornings and laugh at my terrible dad jokes. This was a predator who'd been living in my house, sleeping in my bed, and planning my destruction. The smart play would have been to lawyer up immediately, take my evidence to the cops, maybe try to work out some kind of deal. But Brielle had made one critical mistake in her calculations. She thought I was weak, predictable, easy to manipulate. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. I opened my laptop and started making some calls. 22 years in telecommunications gives you contacts in a lot of interesting places. People who owe you favors, people who know people, people who can make problems disappear. If Brielle wanted to play dirty, I'd show her what dirty really looked like. By morning, I had a plan. And by the end of the week, she'd discover that this particular husband wasn't going to roll over and die quietly. The war was just getting started. My old college roommate, Rick Thompson, had been working as an investigative journalist at the Denver Post for the past 15 years. We'd stayed in touch over the years, mostly through Christmas cards and the occasional beer when he was in town. I never imagined I'd need his professional skills to save my own life. I called Rick on a Thursday morning from my office, making sure the door was locked and my voice was low. Otis Wells, Rick said when he picked up, and I could hear the smile in his voice. What's it been? 6 months. How's the family? That's actually why I'm calling, I said, cutting straight to the point. I need help, Rick. The kind of help that might turn into a story for you. There was a pause. Then Rick's voice turned serious. What kind of trouble are you in? I spent the next 20 minutes laying out everything. The recorded conversation, the offshore accounts, the frame-up plan, all of it. Rick listened without interrupting, occasionally making small sounds of disbelief. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. Jesus, Otis. This is bigger than just a cheating wife story. If what you're telling me is true, we're talking about conspiracy, fraud, maybe even extortion. I can prove every word of it, I said. I've got recordings, bank records, emails, the whole 9 yards. Send me everything, Rick said. And I mean everything. If we're going to expose this, we need to make sure our ducks are in a row. People like this don't go down easy. That afternoon, I met Rick at a coffee shop downtown. far from anywhere Brielle might spot us. He reviewed my evidence with the eye of someone who'd spent years digging up dirt on corrupt politicians and crooked businessmen. "This is solid gold," he said finally, tapping his laptop screen. "Your wife and her boyfriend made one major mistake. They documented everything. These email drafts, the financial transfers, it's all here in black and white. What's our next move?" I asked. Rick leaned back in his chair, a predatory smile spreading across his face. "We're going to give them enough rope to hang themselves. Keep acting normal at home. Don't let on that you know anything. Meanwhile, I'm going to start making some calls, see what else I can dig up on Miles Clark and any other players in this little conspiracy." He paused, his expression turning serious. "But Otis, you need to understand, once we pull this trigger, there's no going back. Your marriage is over, and things are going to get ugly fast. Are you ready for that?" I thought about Daniel and Amelia, about the life I thought we were building together, about all the lies and betrayals that had brought me to this moment. "I'm ready," I said. "Let's burn it all down." 3 weeks into my investigation, I decided it was time to shake the tree and see what fell out. I've been playing the clueless husband long enough, and frankly, watching Brielle lie to my face every single day was eating me alive from the inside. It was a Sunday evening, and we were sitting around the dinner table like a normal family. Daniel was telling us about his upcoming baseball tryouts, while Amelia showed off a drawing she'd made of her dog Max. For a moment, I almost forgot that everything was falling apart. Then Brielle's phone buzzed, and I watched her face light up as she read the message. That same secret smile I'd been seeing for months, the one that never included me. "Sorry, honey," Brielle said to Amelia, not even looking up from her phone. "What were you saying about your picture?" That's when something inside me snapped. "Put the phone down, Brielle," I said, my voice calm, but carrying an edge that made both kids look up from their plates. "Excuse me," she said, finally meeting my eyes. I said, "Put the phone down. We're having dinner with our family." Brielle set the phone aside with an exaggerated sigh. "There. Happy now? You've been so controlling lately, Otis. It's really not attractive." Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his seat, while Amelia's eyes darted between us like she was watching a tennis match. "Controlling," I repeated, tasting the word. "That's interesting. You know what else is interesting? Hotel charges on our credit card for places I've never been." The color drained from Brielle's face, but she recovered quickly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The Marriott downtown, 3 weeks ago. $237 for a room I never slept in." "Dad," Daniel said quietly, "maybe we should." "No, son," I said, keeping my eyes locked on Brielle. "I think it's time your mother and I had an honest conversation for once." Brielle stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I don't have to sit here and listen to your paranoid accusations." "Sit down," I said, and there was something in my voice that made her freeze mid-step. "We're not done here." She sat back down, but her hands were trembling slightly. "Good. Let her feel some of the fear I've been living with." "I know about Miles," I said simply. The silence that followed was deafening. Amelia looked confused, but Daniel's face showed he was starting to piece things together. "Smart kid." "I don't know what you think you know," Brielle said, but her voice had lost all its earlier confidence. "I know about the offshore accounts. I know about the frame job you're planning. I know about everything, Brielle." Her mask finally slipped completely, and for the first time in months, I saw the real woman behind all the lies. She looked desperate, cornered, and absolutely furious. "You've been spying on me," she hissed. "I've been protecting myself and my children from a woman who's planning to destroy their father." "Kids, go to your rooms," Brielle snapped. "No," I said firmly. "They're old enough to know what kind of person their mother really is." That's when Brielle completely lost it. "You pathetic excuse for a man," Brielle snarled, all pretense of being a loving wife and mother evaporating in an instant. "You think you're so smart with your little security cameras and your paranoid theories." Daniel and Amelia sat frozen in their chairs, staring at their mother like they'd never seen her before. In a way, they hadn't. This was the real Brielle, the one who'd been hiding behind fake smiles and manufactured tears for months. "Mom," Amelia whispered, her voice small and frightened. "Shut up," Brielle snapped at her own daughter. "Just shut up and let the adults talk." That crossed a line I didn't even know existed. I stood up slowly, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "Don't you ever talk to my daughter that way," I said, my voice deadly quiet. Brielle laughed, a sound like broken glass. "Your daughter? She's mine too, Otis. At least until the court gives me full custody, because you're an unfit father." "Based on what evidence?" "Based on your drinking problem, your violent tendencies, and the fact that you've been embezzling money from your company to fund your gambling addiction." My blood turned to ice. She was laying out their entire frame job right there at the dinner table, in front of our children. "None of that is true, and you know it," I said. "Really? Then explain the hotel receipts in your name, the credit card charges at that casino in Black Hawk, the missing money from our joint account." She'd been busy. Whatever evidence Miles had manufactured was apparently comprehensive. "You're sick," I said. "You're actually sick if you think I'm going to let you destroy my life and steal my children. Try to stop me," Brielle said, standing up and grabbing her purse. "See how well that works out for you when you're sitting in a jail cell." She headed for the door, then paused and turned back to the kids. "When you're living in some foster home because your father's in prison, remember that he chose this fight, not me." "No," Daniel said, his voice breaking. He was 14 years old and watching his family implode. "Mom, please don't." "Save it," Brielle cut him off. "You'll understand when you're older." The front door slammed behind her, and I was left standing in my dining room with 2 terrified children and the wreckage of 20 years of marriage scattered around me like shrapnel. Amelia started crying, and Daniel put his arm around her shoulders. "Dad," he said, his voice steady despite everything. "What's really going on?" I sat back down and looked at my kids, really looked at them. They deserved the truth, or at least as much of it as they could handle. "Your mother's been lying to all of us for a long time," I said carefully. "She's planning to leave me and take you both with her, and she's trying to make me look like a bad person so the courts will let her do it." "But you're not a bad person," Amelia said through her tears. "No, sweetheart, I'm not, and I'm going to make sure a judge knows that." After Brielle stormed out that Sunday night, I knew I was running out of time. She'd shown her true colors in front of the kids, and there was no going back now. If she was going to declare war, then I needed to make sure I had the ammunition to fight back. Monday morning, I took a personal day and drove straight to our bank. First National had been handling our finances for over 15 years, and they knew me well enough to expedite what I needed to do. "Mr. Wells," said Janet Morrison, our usual branch manager, "what brings you in today?" "I need to make some account adjustments," I said, sliding the necessary paperwork across her desk. "Emergency financial planning." What I didn't tell Janet was that I'd spent all of Sunday night documenting every dollar Brielle had stolen or planned to steal. The offshore accounts Rick had helped me uncover, the hotel expenses, the money she'd been siphoning for months. All of it added up to a clear pattern of financial fraud. Within 2 hours, I transferred every penny from our joint accounts into a new account in my name only. The savings, the checking, the money market account, even the college funds I'd been contributing to for years. All of it moved to where Brielle couldn't touch it. But I didn't stop there. I canceled her credit cards, the gym membership she'd been using to meet Nelson, and the cell phone plan that had been facilitating her affair. Every automatic payment, every direct deposit, every financial lifeline gone. The final move was the most satisfying. I called our mortgage company and had them remove Brielle's name from the account access. The house was in my name only, purchased before we married, and now she'd have no legal claim to it or ability to manipulate the payments. As I drove home that afternoon, my phone started ringing. Brielle, probably trying to use her debit card and finding it declined. I let it go to voicemail. Then Rick Thompson called with news that made my day even better. "Otis, you need to hear this," Rick said, his voice tight with excitement. "I've been digging into Miles Clark's background. This guy's got a history of this kind of thing. 3 other women in the past 5 years, all married, all wealthy, all divorced under mysterious circumstances. Are you saying he's a professional homewrecker? I'm saying he's a predator who targets married women for financial gain. And get this, in 2 of those cases, the husbands ended up facing criminal charges that were later dropped due to lack of evidence." My blood ran cold. They've done this before. Multiple times. But here's the kicker. I found one of the ex-husbands, guy named Robert Fisher in Phoenix. He's willing to testify about their methods. Turns out they use the same playbook every time. Seduce the wife, manufacture evidence against the husband, steal everything in the divorce settlement. How much time do we have? Based on what Fisher told me, they usually move within days once the husband becomes suspicious. Brielle probably called Miles the second she left her house Sunday night. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to wait for them to make their move. I was going to force their hand and expose them publicly before they could destroy me. Rick, how fast can you get a story ready for publication? With what we've got? 24 hours. But Otis, once this goes public, there's no taking it back. Good, because I'm done playing defense. That night, I tucked Daniel and Amelia into bed, knowing it might be the last normal evening we'd have for a while. But for the first time in months, I felt like I was in control of my own destiny. The war was about to go public, and I intended to win it. Tuesday morning's Denver Post featured a front-page story that shook our entire community to its core. Rick had outdone himself with the headline, "Local marketing executive and boyfriend accused of elaborate marriage fraud scheme." The article laid out everything: the recorded conversations, the offshore accounts, the history of targeting wealthy married men, even quotes from Robert Fisher describing how they destroyed his life in Phoenix 3 years earlier. But the real bombshell was the audio file embedded in the online version. Readers could actually hear Brielle's voice as she plotted to frame me and steal my children. My phone started ringing before 7 a.m., but I was already at work, having arrived early to avoid the media circus that was about to erupt. By 9 a.m., the story had been picked up by 3 other newspapers and 2 local television stations. At 10:15 a.m., my boss, Mr. Fletcher, called me into his office. "Otis, I've been getting calls all morning," he said, gesturing to a chair. "Reporters asking about your employment status and whether the company has any comment on the allegations against your wife." My stomach tightened. "I understand if you need me to take leave while this gets sorted out." Fletcher shook his head. "Actually, I called you in here to tell you that Mountain Peak Telecommunications stands behind you 100%. We've reviewed your employment record, your security clearances, and your financial activities. There's not a single red flag in 22 years. Relief flooded through me. "Thank you, sir. That means more than you know." "There's something else," Fletcher continued. "Legal call this morning. Apparently, your wife's attorney has been making inquiries about your salary, your benefits, your stock options. They were fishing for information to use against you in divorce proceedings. Were they successful?" "Hell no. We told them to talk to your lawyer, or take a hike." By noon, the story had exploded across social media. The audio recording had been shared thousands of times, and the comment section was brutal. People who'd known Brielle for years were expressing shock and outrage at her betrayal. But the most satisfying moment came at 2:30 p.m. when my phone rang with a number I recognized: Brielle's mother. "Otis," Mrs. Patterson said, her voice tight with anger. "What have you done?" "I've told the truth, Margaret. That's all. You've destroyed my daughter's reputation over some petty marital dispute. Your daughter destroyed her own reputation when she decided to frame an innocent man and steal his children." There was a long pause. Then Margaret's voice came back colder than I'd ever heard it. "This isn't over, Otis. You think you're so clever, but Brielle has resources you don't even know about. Resources like offshore bank accounts and corrupt lawyers." "Yeah, I know about those too." The line went dead. At 4 p.m., Rick called with an update that made my entire week. 3 more newspapers want to run follow-up stories. Channel 7 News wants an exclusive interview with you for their evening broadcast. And get this, the Colorado Attorney General's office just announced they're opening an investigation into marriage fraud schemes. That evening, as I sat with Daniel and Amelia watching the news coverage of our family's destruction, my son looked at me with something I hadn't seen in months: respect. "Dad," he said quietly, "I'm proud of you for fighting back." "Me too," Amelia added, snuggling closer to me on the couch. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like maybe we were going to be okay. The custody hearing took place 6 weeks after the newspaper story broke, and by then, Brielle's world had completely fallen apart. The public exposure had cost her everything: her job, her friends, even her own family had turned their backs on her after hearing the recordings. I walked into that courtroom with Rick Thompson beside me and a folder full of evidence that would have made a prosecutor weep with joy. Judge Catherine Morrison, no relation to our bank manager, had a reputation for being tough but fair, exactly what I needed. Brielle's lawyer, some overpriced suit named Davidson, try to paint me as a vindictive husband who'd orchestrated a smear campaign against his innocent wife. But when Judge Morrison heard the audio recordings of Brielle planning to frame me, her expression said everything. "Mrs. Wells," Judge Morrison said after listening to 20 minutes of damning evidence, "do you have any explanation for these recordings?" Brielle stood up, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the woman I'd once loved. But when she opened her mouth, only lies came out. "Your Honor, my husband has been stalking me and recording private conversations without my consent. Those recordings were taken out of context and edited to make me look bad." Judge Morrison's eyebrows shot up. "Are you suggesting these are fabricated?" "I'm saying my husband is a controlling, paranoid man who's trying to steal my children because he can't stand the thought of losing control over me." That's when Rick Thompson stood up and handed the judge a USB drive. "Your Honor, if I may, this contains the full, unedited recordings, complete with timestamp data and digital authentication. It also includes testimony from Mr. Robert Fisher of Phoenix, Arizona, who was victimized by the same scheme involving Mr. Miles Clark 3 years ago." The judge spent 20 minutes reviewing the evidence while the courtroom sat in silence. When she finally looked up, her decision was written all over her face. "Mrs. Wells, I've reviewed the evidence presented by both sides. The recordings clearly show premeditated fraud and conspiracy to commit perjury. Furthermore, your plan to falsely accuse your husband of domestic violence to gain custody advantage shows a willingness to use your own children as weapons in this dispute." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I am awarding full custody of Daniel and Amelia Wells to their father, effective immediately. You will be allowed supervised visitation 1 weekend per month, pending the outcome of any criminal proceedings against you." The gavel came down like thunder, and I felt 20 years of marriage and 6 months of hell finally come to an end. Brielle tried to rush toward me as we left the courtroom, but court security stopped her. "This isn't over, Otis," she screamed. "I'll appeal this. I'll take you for everything you have." I turned back and looked at her one last time. This woman who'd shared my bed, raised my children, and tried to destroy my life. "You already tried that, Brielle, and you failed." Outside the courthouse, Daniel and Amelia were waiting with my sister. When they saw me coming down those steps, they ran into my arms like I just returned from war. In a way, I guess I had. 2 years have passed since that day in court, and life has settled into a rhythm I never thought possible during the darkest days of Brielle's betrayal. The house feels lighter now, filled with genuine laughter instead of the forced cheerfulness that masked months of deception. Daniel made varsity baseball as a sophomore, something that still makes me proud every time I think about it. Amelia's artwork now covers the refrigerator again, and she started taking painting classes on Saturday mornings. Both kids are thriving in ways I wasn't sure would be possible after everything they witnessed. The financial recovery exceeded my wildest expectations. When the FBI investigation into Miles Clark's operation concluded, we recovered not just my stolen money, but compensation from several other victims' cases. The offshore accounts Brielle had been hiding contained nearly $800,000 that legally belonged to our marital estate. I used some of that money to start a college fund that actually belongs to the kids this time, not some scheme Brielle was planning to drain for her escape plan. The rest went into securing our future, a trust that she can never touch, no matter what legal game she tries to play. Speaking of Brielle, she got 18 months in county jail for fraud and conspiracy charges. Miles Clark received 3 years in state prison and was ordered to pay restitution to all his victims. He won't be running any more marriage-wrecking schemes anytime soon. The kids visit their mother once a month at the correctional facility, but they've made it clear they have no interest in maintaining a relationship with her after she's released. Daniel told me last month that he's tired of pretending she's sorry for what she did. "She keeps trying to blame you for everything, Dad," he said. "She doesn't get that we were there. We heard what she said to us that night at dinner. As for me, I've started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but there's a woman named Patricia who works in accounting at Mountain Peak. She's got 2 kids of her own from a previous marriage, and we've been taking things slow, building something real instead of rushing into promises that might not mean anything." Rick Thompson won a state journalism award for his series on marriage fraud schemes. The investigation he started led to reforms in how domestic violence allegations are handled in custody cases, and probably saved a lot of innocent people from going through what I experienced. The security system that started this whole nightmare is still running, but now it just keeps us safe instead of revealing ugly truths. Sometimes I check the feeds and see Daniel doing homework at the kitchen table or Amelia practicing piano in the living room, and I'm reminded of how close I came to losing all of this. People ask me if I'm bitter about the 20 years I spent with a woman who turned out to be capable of such cruelty. The honest answer is no. Those years gave me 2 incredible children and taught me lessons about trust, strength, and fighting for what matters that I couldn't have learned any other way. If there's one thing I want guys in similar situations to understand, it's this. When your gut tells you something's wrong, listen to it. Don't make excuses. Don't rationalize away the red flags. And don't let anyone convince you that you're paranoid for protecting yourself and your kids. The truth has a way of coming out eventually. Sometimes you just have to be strong enough to help it along.